All right, this week we are learning about biased studies. I want you to open up your notebooks, go to your next page, and title your page Biased Studies. We're going to learn about a couple of different things that makes a study biased. So if you think about the word bias, it's when you bring your own intuitions, feelings, your own personal opinion into a study. So if I was taking a study on, actually, a study you guys will take this week is a question to people you know, and you're going to ask people if they miss sports. Now, depending on who you ask, you might get very different answers. So part of bias, which you will see with this, is called selection bias. Depending on who you select, ask, you could get very different answers. So a selection bias is when a method for selecting participants produces a sample that is not representative of the population. So if we're looking to see if Conard High School misses sports, then you might think about, are we asking all athletes or are we asking all people that might not miss sports, but maybe they miss theater? So maybe if you asked everyone that was in the spring musical this year, they might have a very different answer than people that are trying to play spring sports this year. So a method for selecting participants produces a sample that does not represent the population. There are two different specific versions of selection bias. One of them is called voluntary response. And other people call that non-response. Now, voluntary response or non-response is when participants choose themselves by responding or not responding to a general appeal. So this is where participants choose themselves. So this happens when you pose a survey question. Let's say you pose it online on a website. And the only way you're going to get people to answer your survey question is if they visit that specific website. So for example, there's a lot of polls that go out on Twitter. Now, if you don't have a Twitter account, then you're never going to see that poll. So the only people that answer that Twitter poll are people that might follow that specific person that posted that specific poll. So you're going to have a voluntary response there because those participants choose to answer that. Now, the other part of that is non-response. Maybe there's a poll that's posted and a bunch of people just don't care about the cause, so they choose not to answer it. So that's non-response. Non-response, you have a lot of issues with census. If you guys went and asked your family members if they answered the census this year, I am willing to bet that many of you will have people in your family that did not answer the census. So that's non-response. The other selection bias we're going to talk about is convenience sampling. Now this is where you select participants that are easiest to reach. So in the beginning of the semester, we did a sample of asking students in our class different questions, like how far do you live from school? Do you prefer Chipotle or Moe's? What color eyes do you have? What color hair do you have? How tall are you? Things like that. Now, if we were trying to figure out information about the entire school, convenience sampling would be the fact that we just ask people in our class. So that's selecting people or participants that are easiest to reach. So now, other than selection bias, so this has to do with how you select your sample, how you select the participants of your study. Selection bias is a huge problem with selecting your sample, but the other part that's important is questioning. So you can ask questions in a way that yields a specific response, and that's called biased questions. So when you ask a biased question, you are asking a question that specifically favors a certain response. Now, here's an example of a biased question. So let's say you are trying to figure out who is going to vote for who for class president. So here's a question. Would you vote for John for class president even though he wants to raise lunch prices? Would you vote for John for class president even though he wants to raise lunch prices? So this question is really just asking, will you vote for John? But when it says, even though he wants to raise lunch prices, you're giving the interviewee a reason to not vote for John. So you need to think about how you can ask a question so that the interviewee can answer in whatever way they want to. If you corner them and make them believe a certain way, they might answer in a way that would just get you off their back. So this week we're going to be doing two different assignments. One of them has to do with selection bias, and this is going to be an Instagram poll, and you're going to be asking a question and then looking at how it might show selection bias. The other one is going to be watching a video and actually watching some news, and you're going to be looking at questions asked and if they're biased or not. So take a look at the rest of the assignments document. Make sure you take all of your notes and send in that picture for your homework credit. And I will see you in the office hours.